today from Dhaka and around the globe. I also give a warm welcome to my fellow panelists, His Excellency Mr. Abdul Hamid Gul, Minister of Justice, Republic of Turkey. I would like to welcome Professor Dr. Payam Akavan, Counsel to Gambia, and Professor of International Law at McGill University. I would like to welcome Professor Imtiaz Hussain of Dhaka University. I would like to welcome Ms. Antonia Malvi, Executive Director of Legal Actions Worldwide. Welcome to all of you. And as we start, I'll just say a few words. The struggle for justice and accountability for the Rohingya people of Myanmar is hitting new milestones with cases filed by Gambia and the support from member states of OIC, Canada and Netherlands at the International Court of Justice. Such collaborations of the international community is indeed a rare united effort for the moral responsibility to hold Myanmar accountable for their failure to prevent genocide and crime against humanity. To start the program today, I would kindly request the Honorable Minister for Justice, His Excellency Mr. Abdul Hamid Gul, to deliver his keynote address.
Sayın Bakan, değerli katılımcılar, hanımefendiler, beyefendiler, sevgili gençler, sizleri en kalbi duygularımla, hasretle, muhabbetle selamlıyorum.
Mr. Minister, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, and dear youth, I'd like to welcome you all with my wholehearted greetings.
Yine hepinizin şahsında bölgemizin, coğrafyamızın, Kafkasya'nın, Orta Doğu'nun, Türkistan'ın, Balkanların, 5 kıtanın gençlerini selamlıyorum.
Alongside you, I'd like to welcome the youth from our region, from our geography, and from Caucasia, from Middle East, from Turkestan, from Balkans, and the youth of 5 continents.
Bugün bir kez daha Kudüs'ün, Gazze'nin, Nablus'un, Ramallah'ın, Batı Şeria'nın, Arakan'ın, Keşmir'in insanlık davasını sürdüren ülkelerin yiğit gençlerine en kalbi selamlarımı gönderiyorum.
I'd like to once more express my wholehearted welcomings to the brave youth who are fighting for the humanitarian cause of Jerusalem, Gaza, Nablus, Ramallah, West Bank, Rakhine, and Kashmir.
Rabbim yar ve yardımcıları olsun diyorum.
I wish that mighty Allah will help them.
Türkiye'deki her bir insanın, her bir genç kardeşimin yüreklerinin onlarla birlikte attığının bilinmesini isterim.
And I'd like you to know that each and every Turkish person and our youth is with them, their hearts is with them.
Konuşmamın başında İslam İşbirliği Teşkilatı Gençlik Zirvesi'nin bugünkü oturumunun açış konuşmasını yapmak üzere beni davet eden kıymetli kardeşim Sayın Doktor Ebu'l-Kelam Abdülmümin Beyefendi'ye şükranlarımı sunmak isterim.
At the beginning of my speech, I'd like to express my gratitude to my distinguished brother, Dr. Abdul-Kelam Abdülmümin, for his kind invitation to me to make my opening speech here in this Youth Summit of OIC.
Yine İslam İşbirliği Teşkilatı Gençlik Forumu'nun değerli başkanı Taha Ayhan kardeşimize de çalışmalarında muvaffakiyetler diliyorum.
I also wish success to the President of Islamic Cooperation Youth Forum, Taha Ayhan.
Bugün video konferans suretiyle de olsa sizlere seslenebilmekten büyük bir mutluluk duyduğumu ifade etmek isterim.
I'd like to express that I'm pleased to be addressing to you today, although this is a video conference.
Bildiğiniz üzere Peygamber Efendimiz gençler üzerinde titizlikle durmuş ve yönetici olarak da gençleri valiler ve yöneticiler olarak hep seçmiştir, atamıştır.
As you know, our Prophet attached great importance to the youth and he assigned young governors and administrators.
İslam'ın evrensel barış mesajı, kardeşlik mesajı yine dünyanın pek çok köşesine bu genç komutanlar ve yöneticiler eliyle ulaştırılmıştır.
And the message of Islam that we should have a universal peace and brotherhood has been taken various parts of the world thanks to these young governors and administrators.
Bu vesileyle çağ açıp çağ kapatan ve İstanbul'u fetheden büyük komutan Fatih Sultan Mehmet Han'ın da İstanbul'u fethettiğinde henüz 21 yaşında olduğunu hatırlatmak isterim.
And I'd like to remind that Sultan Mehmet the Conqueror was at the age of just 21 when he conquered the city of Istanbul, which is an event that opened a new era and closed another one.
Cumhurbaşkanımız Sayın Recep Tayyip Erdoğan'ın kararıyla Ayasofya Camii'de gerçek hüviyetine kavuştu, ibadet. Bu vesileyle tüm kardeşlerimi de Ayasofya'ya, Türkiye'ye, İstanbul'a bu vesileyle davet etmek isterim.
And with the decision of our president, Mr. Recep Tayyip Erdoğan, the Hagia Sophia acquired its real status and it was opened to worship as a mosque. And on this occasion, I'd like to invite all of you to Istanbul, to Hagia Sophia.
Biz de Fatih'in 21 yaşında İstanbul'u fethetmesinden mülhemle Fatih'in İstanbul'u fethettiği yaştasın diye gençlere hep hitap vardır. Gençlere çok büyük bir önem atfedilir.
There's a saying in our country based on the age of Sultan Mehmet the Conqueror. We say to them, you are at the age of 21 when the Sultan Mehmet conquered the city of Istanbul. So we attach great importance to youth.
Evet, ümidimiz gençlerdedir. Bu itibarla İslam İşbirliği Gençlik Forumu'nu çok önemsiyor ve çalışmalarını yakından takip ediyoruz.
Therefore, our hope lies with the youth and we closely follow the works of ICYF and we attach great importance to its works.
Dünyanın dört bir yanında zulme uğrayan tüm kardeşlerimizin selamete kavuşması ve tüm İslam coğrafyasının izzet ve onuruna yaraşır hayat şartlarına ulaşabilmesi bakımından gençlere bugün belki de tarihte hiç olmadığı kadar yoğun bir ihtiyacımız var, çok ihtiyacımız var.
In order for our religious brothers to reach salvation who were persecuted all around the world, and in order for the whole Islamic geography to have a life standard that is in line with our dignity and honor, we need the youth now. Maybe we need it in the history. We need them very much right now.
İslam gençliğinin bir araya getirilmesini amaçlayan, kardeşlik bağının artırılması düsturuyla yola çıkmış bir uluslararası gençlik teşkilatının dünyaya, bütün insanlara söyleyeceği en güçlü mesajın barış ve adalet olması gerektiğini düşünüyorum.
I think that an international organization of youth and its message should be peace and justice to the whole world and to the whole humanity. An organization whose purpose is to bring together the Islamic youth and increase the brotherhood.
Cumhurbaşkanımız Sayın Recep Tayyip Erdoğan, İslam coğrafyalarında ve diğer bütün coğrafyalarda yaşanan zulümlerin, adaletsizliklerin ortadan kaldırılması için çağrıda bulunurken Birleşmiş Milletler Genel Kurulu'nda dünya beşten büyüktür diyerek bütün insanlığın talebine tercüman olmuştur.
In this regard, our President, Mr. Recep Tayyip Erdoğan, reflected the demand of the whole humanity by saying that the world is bigger than five in the UN General Assembly, while he was calling for the elimination of persecution and injustice that's happening in the Islamic geography and also in other parts of the world.
Birleşmiş Milletler'in yapısında 5 ülkenin veto hakkı bulunmaktadır. Maalesef yaşanan zulümlere dünya ortak kurullarında çoğu zaman da seyirci kalınmaktadır.
In the structure of the UN, only 5 countries has the right to veto, and unfortunately, common organizations of the world are just mere spectators of such persecution.
Dünya beşten büyüktür sözü 21. yüzyılın üst başta olacak kadar güçlü bir cümledir. Çünkü dünyada ya barış ve adalet hüküm sürecek ya da bu zulümler devam edecek.
The saying that world is bigger than five is such a strong sentence that it can be a headline of the 21st century, because either peace and justice will rule the world or persecution will go on.
Vicdanı olan hiçbir insanın inancı ne olursa olsun, düşüncesi ne olursa olsun, hangi coğrafyada bulunursa bulunsun, zulüm ve adaletsizlik devam etsin demesi mümkün değildir.
It's not possible for a person who has conscience, regardless of his belief, thoughts, or geographical origin. It's not possible for such a person to say that persecution and injustice should go on.
İşte bu anlayışın dünya ortak kurullarının ana başlığı, levhası olabilmesi için İslam coğrafyasının gençliğinin de bütün insanlığa barış ve adalet çağrısını en güçlü şekilde tekrarlaması ve benimsetmesi şarttır.
And in order to make this saying the main signpost for the whole world, our youth should make a strong call for peace and justice, and this should be reiterated so that it is embraced.
İslam medeniyetinin temsilcileri olarak bir yerde barış aramak yerine bütün işlerimizde, ilişkilerimizde barışı bizatihi gidilecek yol saymak zorundayız.
As the representatives of the Islamic civilization, instead of seeking peace, we have to embrace peace as the only true path that can be walked on with all our works and in all our relations.
Bu anlayışı bütün uluslararası kuruluşların mottosu haline getirmeliyiz. Barış bizim için araç değil, amaçtır. Üzerinde yürüdüğümüz yolun ta kendisidir.
We need to make this understanding the motto of international institutions and organizations. Peace is not a means for us. Peace is our main purpose, and it is the path that we walk on.
İşte bunu gerçekleştirecek olanlar da gençliğin bizatihi kendisidir. Onların enerjisi, dinamizmi ve mücadelesi adalete, hukuka ve barışa yönlendirmek de hepimizin ortak sorumluluğudur.
And this will be carried out through our youth's effort, and their energy, dynamism, and struggle should be directed to justice, law, and peace. And this is our responsibility.
İnsan hakları, eşitlik, insan onuru, düşünce özgürlüğü, başkalarına saygı gibi kavramlara baktığımızda bunların hepsinin yüce dinimizde bir kökü, bir karşılığı bulunmaktadır.
When we look to the concepts like human rights, equality, human dignity, freedom of expression, and respect for others, we can see that all these concepts are already deep-rooted in our august religion.
Bugün dünyanın en fakir 22 ülkesi İslam coğrafyasında bulunmaktadır. Bu fakirlik insanların tembelliğinden kaynaklanmamaktadır.
Today, the poorest 22 countries in the world are from the Islamic geography, but the reason is not that the people are lazy.
Tarihten bu yana sömürüldükleri, kaynakları adil olmayan yollarla ellerinden alındığı içindir.
It's because they were exploited throughout history and their resources were taken from them.
Bugün dünyanın en zengin 62 kişisinin mal varlığı toplam dünya nüfusunun yaklaşık yarısına, yani 3,6 milyar insana denk ise burada bir sorun var demektir. Burada küresel bir adaletsizlik var demektir.
Today, if the wealth of the richest 62 people in the world is equal to the half of the world's population's wealth, namely 3.6 billion people, this means that there is a problem, and this means that there is a global injustice.
Dünyada 821 milyon insan çoğu gece aç bir şekilde uykuya dalarken 672 milyon kişiye obezlik teşhisi konuyorsa burada bir sorun var demektir.
If 821 million people go to sleep with an empty stomach most of the nights, and if 672 million people are diagnosed with obesity, this means that there is a problem.
Dünyanın farklı yerlerinde 258 milyon kişi daha insani şartlarda yaşamak için yollara dökülüyorsa, 68 milyon kişi zorla yerlerinden ediliyorsa burada bir sorun var demektir.
If 258 million people are set off road in order to live in humanitarian conditions, and if 68 people are forcibly displaced, this means that there is a problem.
Bu sorunların ortadan kaldırılması hepimizin ortak görevidir.
It's our common duty to eliminate these problems.
Şahsiyet sahibi, eli kalem tutan, ötekinin fikrine saygılı, onurlu, izzetli bireyler olarak toplumda seçilen, gösterilen gençlerle biz bu sorunların üstesinden inşallah geleceğiz.
And inshallah we will be overcoming these problems with the youth who have a good character, who respect others' thoughts, who are literate, who are honorable and dignified.
Bütün insanlık ya dinde kardeştir ya yaratılışta kardeştir. Hazreti Ali'nin de ifadesiyle insan eşit doğar, eşit yaşamalıdır. Herkes için adalet.
As distinguished Ali said, people are brothers based on their religion, or either they're based on their creation. So all people are born equal, so they should live equally, and justice should be for all.
Dünya nimetleri savaşla değil, barış içerisinde, ticaret kurallarıyla, hukuk ile adil paylaşılmalıdır.
The blessings of the world should be shared in peace based on law and with the commerce, not with war.
İnsanlığın ortak değerlerinden sadece üçünü sizinle paylaştım. Bu mesajları slogan olmaktan çıkarmak ve dünyanın her yeri için uygulamak siz gençlerin gayretiyle olacaktır.
I've only shared three of the common values of humanity, and it will be through the efforts of the youth so that these slogans will become a reality and be implemented all around the globe.
İslam İşbirliği Teşkilatı üyesi 57 ülkenin birliği ve beraberliği ile olacaktır.
This will be through the unity and solidarity of 57 member states of the Organization for Islamic Cooperation.
İyiliği emretmek ve çoğaltmak, kötülüğü ortadan kaldırmak hepimizin görevidir.
It is our duty to increase and order for the good and eliminate the bad.
Bugün dünyanın pek çok noktasında zulme uğrayan herkes, dini, dili, inancı, ırkı ne olursa olsun ama zulme uğrayan herkes İslam gençliğinden yardım beklemektedir ve sizden de beklenen bu mesajın yine iletilmesi ve bu mazlumların yanında yer almaktır.
Today, people who were persecuted all around the globe, regardless of their religion, their language, their beliefs, or their ethnic origin, these persecuted people are expecting the help of the Islamic youth, and this is your duty to submit this message and carry out this task.
Daha yakın geçmişte Myanmar devletince 2012 baharında başlatılan operasyonlarla Rohingyalı kardeşlerimiz evleri, iş yerleri basılmak suretiyle hunharca katledilmiş, bu melun saldırıdan kaçmaya çalışırken nicesi sınır boylarında vurularak, boğularak ya da açlıktan hayatlarını kaybetmişlerdir.
And when we look at the near past, in spring of 2012, the state of Myanmar launched an operation against our Rohingya brothers, and their houses and workplaces have been raided and they were violently killed. And those who tried to escape these attacks, most of them are shot on the borderlines or drowned or starved to death.
Maalesef yaşanan bu acılar 21. yüzyılın sözüm ona uygar dünyasının gözleri önünde gerçekleşmiştir.
And unfortunately, all this misery took place right before the eyes of the so-called civilized world of the 21st century.
Konuyla ilgili olarak BM Myanmar İnsan Hakları Özel Raportörü Yang Lee'nin 12 Mart 2018 tarihinde İnsan Hakları Konseyi'ne sunduğu tespitler dahi zulmün ve katliamın ne boyutta olduğunu göstermesi bakımından çok çarpıcıdır.
UN Myanmar Human Rights Special Rapporteur Yang Lee presented some findings to the Human Rights Council of the UN on 12th of March 2018, and these findings are quite striking in that they demonstrate the extent of persecution and killings there.
Raportör, Rohingya Müslümanlarına yapılan operasyonların soykırım düzeyinde olduğunu belirtmiştir, tespit etmiştir.
The rapporteur found that the operation against the Rohingya people are at the level of a genocide.
Yine BM İnsan Hakları Konseyi, Myanmar Bağımsız Uluslararası Araştırma Komisyonu'nun 12 Eylül 2018 ve 16 Eylül 2019 tarihli raporlarında göçe zorlanan ve katledilen Rohingya Müslümanları dışında bölgede kalan yaklaşık 600 bin Rohingya'nın da halen soykırım tehdidi altında bulunduğu ifade edilmiştir.
It is also stated by the UN Human Rights Commission's Myanmar Independent International Fact-Finding Mission, and its report stated 12th of September 2018 and 16th of September 2019, apart from those who are forced to migrate and those who were killed, there are still 600,000 Rohingya people facing the threat of genocide.
İslam İşbirliği Teşkilatı üyesi ülkelerce her fırsatta bu zulmün durdurulması için girişimlerde bulunulmuş. Nihayet 31 Mayıs 2019 tarihinde düzenlenen 14. İslam Zirvesi konferansında oluşan ortak irade doğrultusunda Uluslararası Adalet Divanı nezdinde Myanmar aleyhine 11 Kasım 2019 tarihinde dava ikame edilmiştir.
Organization for Islamic Cooperation and its member states have taken various initiatives at each occasion, and finally on 31st of May 2019, when the 40th Islamic Conference Summit was held, thanks to a commonwealth established there, a case was opened against Myanmar on 11th of November 2018 before the International Court of Justice.
Söz konusu davada Myanmar tarafından 1948 tarihli soykırımın önlenmesi ve cezalandırılmasına dair BM Sözleşmesi'nin ihlal edildiği ortaya konmuştur.
It is established in this case that Myanmar violated the UN Convention on Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide of 1948.
Myanmar'ın ihlali oluşturan eylemlerine son vermesi ve tekrarlanmasını önlenmesi, sorumlu kişilerin uluslararası ceza mahkemeleri de dahil olmak üzere yetkili mahkemelerce cezalandırılmasının sağlanması, Rohingya halkının zararları gidermek amacıyla güvenli geri dönüşlerini sağlaması, vatandaşlık ve insan haklarına saygı duyup koruması, herhangi bir ayrımcılığa ve zulme uğramalarını engellemek için gerekli adımları atması ve Uluslararası Adalet Divanı'nca önleyici tedbirlere hükmedilmesi talep edilmiştir.
In this case, it is requested that Myanmar should cease its action constituting the violation and prevent the repetition of these actions. It's requested that people responsible for these acts should be punished under authorized court, including international criminal courts. It's also requested that Rohingya people should make a sane return to their home in order to compensate their damages, and their citizenship and human rights should be respected and protected. It's also requested from Myanmar that necessary steps should be taken in order to prevent any kind of discrimination and persecution. It is also requested from the International Court of Justice that the court decides and orders for preventive measures.
Divan 23 Ocak 2020 tarihli kararıyla önleyici tedbirlere hükmetmiş ve Myanmar hükümetinden alınan tedbirlere riayet edilmesi noktasında divana düzenli rapor sunmasına karar vermiştir.
And the International Court of Justice ordered for preventive measures on 23rd of January 2020. The court also ordered that Myanmar should regularly submit reports to the court on the compliance with these preventive measures.
Her ne kadar hunharca eziyet edilen ve katledilen Rohingyalı kardeşlerimizi geri getirmeyecekse de halen Myanmar'da kalıp sürekli bir korku halinde yaşayan kardeşlerimizin akıbeti bakımından divanca alınan tedbir kararları ehemmiyetlidir.
Although these decisions will not bring back our Rohingya brothers who were killed and it is still important for the future of those who are still living in Myanmar with the fear of their life.
Rohingya halkının Myanmar'da güvenli, onurlu ve kalıcı şekilde geri dönüşleri gerçekleşmeden Arakan'da kalıcı bir çözüm ve barışa ulaşılabilmesi mümkün değildir.
It is not possible to ensure a permanent solution and peace in Rakhine without the safe, dignified and permanent return of Rohingya people to Myanmar.
Türkiye ilk baştan itibaren meselenin siyasi çözümüne ilişkin uluslararası çabalara katkı sunmanın yanı sıra Bangladeş ve Myanmar'daki kamplarda zor koşullar altında yaşayan Rohingyalıların acılarının dindirilmesi için de insani yardım faaliyetlerini bizzat Sayın Cumhurbaşkanımız ve değerli eşi hanımefendi ve tüm kurumlarımızda yine yanlarında olduk, yardım faaliyetlerini sürdürdük ve sürdürmeye devam edeceğiz.
And as Turkey, at the first stages, we contribute to the international efforts for the political solution of this issue, and we also provided humanitarian aid with the order of our president, Mr. Recep Tayyip Erdogan, and his distinguished wife, and also with our institutions. We provided humanitarian aid to those Rohingyans who are living in Myanmar and in Bangladesh, and we will be carrying out and going on with our aids.
Bugün Türkiye dünyanın 17. büyük ekonomisine sahip ülkedir. Cumhurbaşkanımız liderliğinde insani kalkınma yardımlarında dünyanın 6.'sı, insani yardımlarda ise dünya birincisi bir ülkeyiz.
Today, Turkey has the 17th biggest economy in the world, and with the leadership of our president, Mr. Recep Tayyip Erdogan, we are now at the sixth country in the world with regard to humanitarian development assistance, and Turkey is the first country in the world when it comes to humanitarian aid.
Bangladeş'in maddi bütün külfetine rağmen insani mülahazalarla Rohingyalara kapılarını açmasını, tüm imkanlarını seferber ederek onları ağırlamasını takdire şayan buluyoruz.
It is admirable that Bangladesh opened its door to our Rohingya brothers, which is actually a very considerate action, although this has a pecuniary burden, and this country mobilized its all means to do so.
Böylesi bir yardımın anlam ve önemini Suriye'deki zulümler nedeniyle zulme uğrayan, savaş nedeniyle haksızlığa uğrayan, yerlerinden edilen milyonlarca Suriyeli kardeşimize ev sahipliği yapmamız hasebiyle çok iyi bilmekteyiz.
We very well know the extent of such an extent and the importance and meaning of such a assistance and aid, as we also host millions of Syrian brothers of ours who were persecuted and displaced due to the war in Syria.
Sözlerime son verirken Türkiye olarak Myanmar'da ve Bangladeş'teki Rohingyalara yapmakta olduğumuz insani yardımı kararlılıkla sürdüreceğimizi ve konunun hakkaniyetle çözümü için uluslararası tüm platformlarda çaba göstermeye devam edeceğimizi huzurlarınızda bir kez daha ifade etmek isterim.
Before I finalize my remarks, I'd like to once more reiterate that as Turkey, we will be continuing our aid to Rohingya people in Myanmar and in Bangladesh, and we will be contributing to the international efforts in order for the equitable solution of this matter.
Dost ve kardeş ülke Bangladeş'in kurucusu Banga Bandhu Şeyh Mujibur Rahman'ı 100. doğum yıl dönümü vesilesiyle saygıyla ve rahmetle anıyorum.
I'd like to express my highest consideration to the founding father of our friend and brotherly country, Bangladesh, on his 100th birth anniversary, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman.
2020 yılı İslam İşbirliği Teşkilatı Gençlik Zirvesi'nin tüm İslam gençliğine, İslam dünyasına ve bütün insanlığa hayırlar getirmesini Cenab-ı Allah'tan niyaz eder. Hepinize saygılarımı sunarım.
I wish from Mighty Allah that this year's Islamic summit will yield the greatest good for the Islamic youth and the whole Islamic world and also the whole humanity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Mr. Abdul Hamid Gul, Minister of Justice of Turkey. We thank you for your valuable comments. You've touched on a lot of points that have already happened over the last few years, and we do appreciate from Bangladesh the help the Republic of Turkey, under the leadership of President Erdogan, has given to the people of Rohingya and to Bangladesh to provide humanitarian assistance to the Rohingya people. And I thank you for restating all the points regarding peace and justice. It is very important for the youth today to be able to be leaders tomorrow, and especially today because it's now the 100th anniversary of Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman's birthday and birth year, and we hope the listeners and the participants today will be leaders in his image in coming decades. So we have started off our second session today of the Road to Accountability and Justice, and we just heard the keynote speech. I would now like to draw attention to the special work that Professor Dr. Payam Akavan has done regarding driving the case for justice and accountability for persecuted humans of the northern Rakhine state of Myanmar, the Rohingya people. I would like to ask Professor Akavan to share his thoughts with us for the youth today. Thank you very much.
Dear friends and colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, alaikum salam. I'm honored to participate in the OIC Youth Conference, and I'm very grateful to the Foreign Ministry of Bangladesh for this kind invitation. And I also recognize the occasion this year of the 100th anniversary of the birth of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman Bangabandhu, and it makes us think about 1971 and the painful birth of Bangladesh as an independent nation. It's a reminder that unfortunately humankind's collective past is full of accounts of war and violence and conquest and genocide. And it is for all of you, youth, the leaders of tomorrow, to imagine a different future. And that future must be one that is based on the universality of human rights, on the basic principle, one would say reality, that every human being has an inherent dignity, whether we are Muslim, Christian, Jew, Buddhist, or Hindu. We are all entitled to respect as creatures of God, as human beings. And this is really the beginning and end of all knowledge. And before speaking to you about the efforts at justice for the long persecuted Rohingya brothers and sisters in Myanmar, I share with you the poem of the great Sufi Sa'di of Shiraz, who said, "Human beings are members of one whole, created in essence of one soul. should one part experience pain, the other parts uneasy will remain. You who have no sympathy for human pain, the name of human you cannot retain. So for us to feel the pain of others and to struggle for justice is what it means to be a human being. I'm calling today from The Hague in the Netherlands, where some 30 years ago I began my career as a United Nations war crimes prosecutor. And of course, in those days, we had the horrible genocide against the Bosnian Muslims in a place called Srebrenica, which for my generation became an example of how the world cannot remain silent in the face of genocide, in the face of mass atrocity. And the United Nations, for the first time in its history, established an international criminal tribunal here in The Hague to prosecute the perpetrators of those crimes, because impunity is unthinkable for these crimes. And it's sad that today, 30 years later, after the promises of never again, we are once again dealing with the genocide against the long persecuted Rohingya minority in Myanmar. I want to briefly speak to you about the two accountability mechanisms which have become engaged in the struggle for justice. And I preface this by saying that sadly, no amount of justice can bring back the dead. No amount of justice can undo the horrors with which those women and children and men who languish in Kutupalong have witnessed. And I recognize here the extraordinary generosity of the people and government of Bangladesh in showing the difference between opening your doors and hearts to those that suffer, as opposed to being the cause of their persecution and displacement. The International Criminal Court in The Hague addresses individual criminal responsibility, whereas the International Court of Justice addresses the responsibility of governments. In 2018, through certain efforts that were made, we explored the question of whether the International Criminal Court has jurisdiction, because Myanmar has not signed the statute of the court and does not recognize its jurisdiction. Fortunately, there was a basis for the court's jurisdiction on the grounds that Bangladesh, being a state party, recognizes the court's jurisdiction, and the prosecutor of the court argued successfully that in respect of the crime of deportation, the crime may begin on the territory of Myanmar, but is concluded on the territory of Bangladesh, and on that basis, the court has now authorized an investigation. But that partial jurisdiction was not satisfying, because it opened the genocide which is occurring entirely on the territory of Myanmar. And here I think we have really one of the most glorious moments in the history of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, where the 57 member states came together and called for a case to be brought before the International Court of Justice under the 1948 Genocide Convention, which was adopted, of course, in the shadow of the Holocaust at the end of the Second World War. And it fell upon the small but mighty African nation of the Gambia to bring that case with the support of the OIC in the historic trial which I had the honor of participating in. We were pleased that the court ruled on January 23rd of this year unanimously that pending consideration of the merits and a final judgment, that Myanmar is under an obligation to take all necessary measures to prevent the commission of further genocidal acts. And although sadly more than 1 million Rohingya have already been displaced, we hope that the court, as the guardian of the Genocide Convention, will deter further atrocities against the 600,000 Rohingya that remain in Myanmar. Before closing, I wish to share with you just some brief images to explain to you the power of justice, the power of telling someone who has lost everything, who's been robbed of their humanity, that their suffering matters, that their dignity matters. So with your permission, I share with you this image of three of our Rohingya brothers and sisters who had come to The Hague for the hearings before the International Court of Justice, and who witnessed there the power of justice, who saw that the whole world stands in solidarity with them and cares about their suffering. And this image was sent to me on January 23rd, when the court delivered its judgment. And you can see the smiles on the face of these wonderful souls who have experienced unspeakable suffering. And I think that picture really speaks so forcefully to the importance of speaking truth to power and pursuing justice even against impossible odds. So I will not take your time any further. I thank once again the Foreign Ministry of Bangladesh for giving me the honor to speak to the youth who I know are coming from many different countries. And I will end by urging you all to assume personal responsibility for the betterment of the world. It is said that all that it takes for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. So never be silent in the face of injustice. And I will end with another Sufi poem of the great Rumi, who tells us that we should never underestimate our own power. Rumi said, "Think not that you're a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in the drop." Thank you very much, and Khuda Hafiz.
Professor Akavan, thank you very much for your very thoughtful remarks. And you've played a very special role on behalf of Gambia on bringing this case to justice. And you did put a smile on a lot of people who were waiting for this day to come. I thank you for your efforts, and I thank you for explaining it in very lucid terms to all the listeners over here and making it very simple for them to understand how this process had begun and how and what the justifications were. And of course, we gave a very good points to ponder on from Sheikh Saadi and to Rumi to profess the human values of everyone, from one person to everyone, and from everyone to one person. Thank you for your comments. And I would like to bring attention to scholar Professor Imtiaz Hussain from Dhaka University, who has been working very tirelessly on this issue, to bring this issue to the attention of the world. And he has been working in developing and articulating all the atrocities and genocide that has taken place in Myanmar, and how the Rohingya people had to take shelter in Bangladesh. And he has been a key person in articulating these issues. So without further ado, I would like to ask the professor to please give his valuable remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, the chair, Mr. Qazi Nabil Ahmed. Thank you for giving me the opportunity, my co-panelists, and all the young people out there. Now, let me, the time slot is so little to discuss something called Genesis of Rohingya genocide, but I'll try my best to, put it in 7 to 10 minutes. Now, when we talk about Rohingya genocide, we need to be very clear what is genocide, because this is one concept which we can't define by ourselves, which we can't amend, because it is internationally recognized legally defined concept way back in 1949, and there is no way one can, use it differently. It has to stick to the definition. And when we look into the definition, couple of things become very important. One is the critical part is intent to destroy, or intention to destroy. That's the critical part. And it doesn't have to be in whole. It can be in whole or in part. This is the second part. It doesn't have to be the entire population. Even a small part of the entire population, one can have genocide and it's intent to destroy. And then again, there are four categories, mainly national, ethnic, racial, and religious. Only on four categories, not in other categories. And people have some idea, particularly a lot of young people sometimes come and tell me about the killing. You can have a genocide actually without killing, or even 8 or 10 killing, because killing is not the critical part. What is critical is intention to destroy. And it can be mental harm or bodily harm. It could be conditions of life. If you don't give education, deliberately to a particular group, that also can be genocidal. So we need to be very clear as why Rohingya is a genocide, because if you look at the national, ethnic, racial, and religious on all four categories, and because I think we have already heard that even the term there, the word Bengalis, they would not recognize the term Rohingya, all makes it very clear that there's an intention to destroy. Now, to look into the genesis, why that is so, and I'll try to give you my sense of genocide, and particularly Rohingya genocide. It is the politics of singularity. This is the critical part. When a state or nation or the politics of that country tries to bring everything singularity, and that is precisely what has happened with other genocide as well. It was singularity that created the Nazi genocide, the Rwanda genocide, and not to mention the 1971 genocide. So singularity is the issue. Now, when it comes to Myanmar, we see that in the beginning, and I say back in 1948, when the country came into existence, even the Prime Minister, UNU, pointed out, and I'm quoting UNU, the Rohingyas has the equal status of nationality with Kachin, Kaya, Karen, Mon, Rakhine, and Shan, unquote. Even in 1961 census, they were described as Rohingyas. So what happened? Why suddenly they were made, stateless, and then almost to the point which we are now discussing, genocide. I think that year that has to be, brought into this discussion is 1962, when the military took over. With the military not having enough support, one can easily see it was easy for them to do something by which to, create a base in the country. And what they did was to confluence religion and race. And this confluence of religion and race, or the singularity that I'm referring to, is what I think started the journey of this of Rohingya genocide. And it was easy for the Rohingya to be labeled because they were racially different, linguistically different, not to mention religion-wise different. So it was easy for the Myanmar military to target them and get the support of the Burman Buddhist majority. Now, one has to keep in mind that it is not against only the Rohingyas that genocide has been committed by the military. The military has committed genocide also against other minorities in Myanmar. Now, if you look on the legal part, and I'm sure Dr. Akaban would know more about this, 2008 National Constitution is one of those constitutions which really one can get a sense as to why they're still treated as something different, and not to mention, as outsiders or even Bengalis, which has changed though, and I'll come to that in a minute. Now, in the 2008 Constitution, they have a concept called Taing Inta, which means multinational race, and the idea is that if there are 50,000 of them, and if there are two contiguous township of this multinational race, numbering 50,000, and that would mean 50,000, that would mean 100,000, then they are entitled to an autonomous zone. That has become the problem with the Rohingyas. There are more than 100,000 of them, and they don't want to give the autonomous zone to a group which is racially, linguistically, and in terms of religion are different. And that is the reason they try to bring out this, different ways of saying you have the verification card almost as foreigners, and you have to declare yourself as Bengalis and not as Rohingyas, because the moment they recognize them as Rohingyas in the Arakan, the Rohingyas by number, they would be getting the autonomous status, and which is there in the constitution. So the point here is you can see the politics of that. Now, what has really, I think, the trigger point, and I'm coming to 2017, the trigger point, I believe, is the Kofi Annan Commission report, because the Kofi Annan Commission report, particularly if you look at recommendation 17, I think that is what worried them. With all, you can debate on the Kofi Annan Commission report, but recommendation 17 says, and I'm quoting the Kofi Annan Commission report, and it says, while recognizing that the 1982 law is the current basis for citizenship, the Commission recommends the government of Myanmar set in motion a process to review the law. That is where I think they literally got scared. So if you look at the dates, it becomes very clear as to why a genocide took place in the month of August, because there are 4 dates which are important. On 23rd August 2017, the Advisory Commission, what is known as Kofi Annan Commission, submitted the final report to Myanmar national authorities. On 24th August, the media at home and abroad published the report in detail. On 25th August, the so-called Arsa attack took place. And on 26th August, the genocide, or what immediately was referred to as ethnic cleansing, took place. So 23rd, 24th, 25th, 26th, one can easily see that even whatever there was in the Kofi Annan Commission, they found it problematic, and that it started the whole genocide. Also keep in mind that it is not only Bangladesh where you have Rohingyas. Our research shows there are 19 countries. You have a big Rohingya diaspora all over the world. Of course, you have Rohingyas in Bangladesh, 1.1 million, which is a bigger population than Bhutan. Keep in mind, Bhutan's population is less than 800,000. Here we have 1.1 million in 3 months. Bhutan became Bhutan in 60,000 years, and they have a king. Here, 1.1 million people are literally looked after by a young person in RRC office. So you can well imagine the Bangladesh's, the kind of, I guess, a success story when it comes to managing 1.1 million refugees, which are more than a population of Bhutan. There are 19 countries. You have 40,000 plus in India. You have in Pakistan. You have in Saudi Arabia. You have in Japan. You have in Australia. You have it in Malaysia, in Thailand, and I can go on and on and on. So it's not only in Bangladesh that we have Rohingyas, because this is something that started way back as a hidden or a slow genocide way back, and we have an excellent book on that by Azim Ibrahim, and he wrote the book before 2017 genocide. So that will give you a sense. The Myanmar was into this way back. Now, let me just very quickly end up by saying what has changed. What has changed in the meantime, and Dr. Akavan has pointed out on the ICC and ICJ. I just want to reflect on the ICJ something that has changed and we have to keep in mind. Now, during the ICJ submission by Myanmar, and this is very important to know, the Myanmar team, including Aung San Suu Kyi, never for once used the word Bengalis or that they are illegal migrants. Not even once. Throughout, they have used the term that they are Arakanese Muslims. So the question of them being Bengalis, them being outsiders is no longer there, because this is at an international level. Here is Myanmar trying to defend itself. And I guess they knew that if the word Bengalis would be used, they would have a tough time. So they did not for once throughout, and myself was also present in there. And I can tell you, this is very important, because whatever discourse they have in Myanmar that these are Bengalis, and the 2008 laws that they have created where the national verification does not stand anymore, because they themselves are saying that they are Arakanese Muslim. So if they are Arakanese Muslim, they have to return to Arakan. So this is very important part. The other two important things that have come up is one, the ICJ, the provisional verdict that have come up was unanimous. There was no dissent, and we had judges around the world, and it was a unanimous decision. So I think that's is very important. The second one is, and this is absolutely an important part, because this is the first time the Rohingyas get a recognition, because the ICJ in the verdict uses the word Rohingya. I think, and this is the greatest, one of the biggest victory that Payam and his team has done for the Rohingyas, is to push Myanmar to a position where the ICJ comes with a verdict saying that they are Rohingyas. So the point, no longer is there of them being outsiders or foreigners or Bengalis or anything of kind. So this is the change that has come up. And this is where I think we need to push them, because Kofi Annan Commission also talks about reviewing the law. I think 1982 law, they have to review it. And since they themselves are saying that they are Arakanese Muslims, so they'll better put it in the law that these are Arakanese Muslim, and they don't have to sign as Bengalis when they ask for citizenship. And since they're Arakanese Muslim, there is no reason why they would not get citizenship. And so my last point here is, you can't do it alone. Bangladesh, I think, already we have heard His Excellency, the Justice Minister from Turkey, and even in the last 2 days. So it's an international issue. Let me be clear on this. When a genocide happens, it cannot be bilateral. The moment a genocide takes place, by definition, it becomes international. And this is something the young people have to understand. And this is where the young people need to really focus, so that they can start working in their respective countries. Because the moment it becomes genocide, it is not because we have 1.1 million, so it is Bangladesh's headache. The moment it becomes genocide, and it doesn't matter whatever genocide we are talking about, by definition, it becomes an international issue and becomes something that all of us, we need to work on. So let me end by saying that this is not simply a Bangladesh-Myanmar issue. Rather, it is an international issue, an issue of norms and values, an issue of rules and regulations, an issue of decency and civility, an issue of being civilized. Indeed, an issue of being human. How to ensure justice to a population in a dire situation, a population lost everything, even to dream and live a life with dignity. Thank you very much.
Professor Imtiaz Ahmed, thank you very much for your illuminating discussion. You gave a very good rundown of the timeline of how this situation came about. And we have been very, I think, well informed from 1962 onwards up to 2017, how the situation has developed. I thank you for your insights. I'm sure it has given a lot of useful information and understanding to our listeners today. I would like to add that Gambia, which has done the case in ICJ, and it has brought this case to the notice of the world. And a special role for this purpose has been played by Legal Action Worldwide. And Legal Action Worldwide is a council, is a party to the council led by Gambia. So I would like the executive director, Ms. Antonia Malve, to say a few words about their experience and the involvement. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much to you for inviting me on this distinguished panel to the OIC and to the Bangladesh Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Legal Action Worldwide, as you heard, is a non-profit organisation comprised of human rights lawyers. And we represent thousands of victims and survivors who've suffered from human rights violations and abuses across the globe, in the Middle East, Africa, and in Southeast Asia. Now, tonight I was asked to address the topic of the Rohingya, the most persecuted people in the world. And I was thinking, indeed, if this is true, it's an unenviable title. It was first attributed to the Rohingya in 2013, 7 years ago. And since that time, it's clear to us that the situation has deteriorated even further. And I think we're all familiar, of course, with the 2017 clearance operations, which resulted in the hundreds of thousands of Rohingya crossing the border from Myanmar into Bangladesh. So if they are the most persecuted people in the world, it's vital that we all together, and you, the youth, take steps to address this situation, but with the Rohingya community. Now, Legal Action Worldwide represents hundreds of Rohingya in their quest for international justice, and indeed in supporting the International Court of Justice case and in a victim's submission before the International Criminal Court. I was also one of the UN investigators on the fact-finding mission in Myanmar, and I had the unenviable task, I think, today of interviewing hundreds of Rohingya, many of them women and many of them girls, and listening to atrocities that I think will stick in my mind forever. And having listened to hundreds of Rohingya, I wanted to share with you 4 thoughts today. The first is that we need to assist the Rohingya to transform from victims, which they are when you have suffered the loss, seen all your members of your family killed, or have been subjected to mass gang rape, transforming from a victim to a survivor who can articulate their demands and their quest for justice, because the road for justice takes a very long time and you need to be strong to traverse that journey. So we need to assist them with those tools, with legal information, with psychosocial support if they want it, and with the ability, the tools to articulate their demands in Burmese and in English. Secondly, we must support them to engage in these various international proceedings. And earlier we saw a picture from Professor Akalan of the Rohingya survivors at the International Court of Justice. And we assisted those 3 Rohingya survivors to attend The Hague. And we also assisted some of them to go before the Human Rights Council in Geneva earlier last year. It was an extraordinary journey. And I know that both Professor Imtiaz and Professor Payan will remember some of the comments that were made. This was the first time they had got a plane, the first time they'd slept in a bed. And we all wondered, would they return to Bangladesh? And indeed they did, and they are heroes in their community. And I want to take this opportunity to thank the Bangladesh government and everybody who supported that journey, because it's so important for the individuals and the communities of these atrocities to participate in the proceedings. They are about them and they should be present. And indeed, in this world of COVID, how will we help them and support them to travel again? Third, you, the international community, all of us, have to make a long-term commitment to ending serious international crimes, to supporting long-term accountability. We've heard of the case of the International Criminal Court, the International Court of Justice, but there are also other ways, and we should be supporting them as well. Recently, the UK, and you may hear that I'm British, launched its first human rights sanctions. It listed 2 very senior Myanmar generals, but it could have listed more, and it should. And there are other ways. There are companies that are supporting the Myanmar military, the Tatmadaw. We should be looking into the involvement of those companies, and it was listed in the UN fact-finding mission report. And my fourth point that I'd like to raise is the warning signs of international crimes. The UN fact-finding mission in its 2018 report said that what happened to the Rohingya was a foreseeable and planned catastrophe. There was decades of persecution. So 2017 was not unforeseen, but we didn't act sufficiently. We must be vigilant, we must act together. If we see violations further occurring, we must do something about it. And at this point, I'm going to end. And I think you, the youth, have that ability to do it. You're the generation of today and the generation of tomorrow. And you have the power to make the change. Because I don't want to be here in another decade still discussing whether the Rohingya are still the most persecuted people in the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Antonia Malve, for your valuable words, and your organization has played a very valuable role in assisting the Council of Gambia to bring this atrocity to justice in the ICJ. And the path was not easy, I'm sure. And what Professor Payam has shared, Professor Imtiaz has shared, your deliberation has given a very good roundup to that, as to how these works don't happen in isolation. And research work and nonprofits like yours are organizations that help bring these cases to justice. I would just like to say a few words that Bangladesh is the neighboring country of Myanmar, and as such, our Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina in 2017 opened the borders to assist the humanitarian needs of almost 1.1 million people in total. At that point, 700,000 people. And Bangladesh has its own needs regarding economy and food safety and other issues, even ecological. And we had to give huge shelter to a large number of people. As Professor Imtiaz said, it was larger than the population of our neighboring country, Bhutan. And that happened overnight. And we do realize that catastrophes happen, as happened in 1971 in Bangladesh when Bangladesh Sheikh Mujibur Rahman declared the independence of the country, as it happened in Nazi Germany and in Europe. And as Professor Akavan pointed out very well, that Srebrenica, though now might seem far away in Bosnia, but for those of us of a certain age, it's not that far away. We still remember very vividly when the wars in Serbia and Bosnia were happening. So the struggle, the issues have not gone away. Maybe they have changed locations and they've come somewhere else. So today at this point, I think our panelists have given us a lot of thoughts to think about, and we can open up to a few questions. I will direct the first two questions to Professor Imtiaz from, I'll say the two questions together for time issue. From Faisal of Bangladesh, my question to Dr. Imtiaz Ahmed, sir. I'm a great fan of yours. I'm also a student of international relations at Jangin University. The Muslim world is being persecuted right after World War I with the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, but we can sense a rise of Islamization from Turkey. As a professor of IR, what do you think of Islamic nationalism all over the world? And also another question to you, Professor Imtiaz, would be from Abdul Bari. It is, when will Myanmar accept the ICJ's final verdict? If Myanmar rejects that final verdict, then what will the next steps for Rohingya repatriation be? I'll stop there or bring the next question later. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. To Faisal, well, Islamic nationalism is a misnomer. You see, we talk about Islamic Ummah. You know, it's not Islamic nationalism would be a misnomer. And nationalism has not done very good. You just need to read Tagore's work on nationalism and way back, and this was before Second World War. He has an interesting book called Nationalism, where he says, get out of that. It's demonic, and we have seen how Europe has suffered. Don't forget, in the Second World War, and that was a war on nationalism. 66 million people died in 6 years. That means every year, 11 million people died. And of course, that includes 6 million Jews, 22 million Russians, not to mention Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Islamic Ummah is the term that we refer to. I'm sure you must be familiar. So one has to be very careful of we do use nationalism quite a lot for many reasons. But when it comes to Islamic nationalism or Hindu nationalism or Buddhist nationalism, you need to be careful, because all religion actually, I would, maybe in another occasion can discuss this, all had an interest to bring all groups, the mosaic, they say Prophet Moses and mosaic is the way to look into what mosaic is all about. But unfortunately, we all got into singularity. So stay away from singularity. That would be my response. On Mr. Bari's on ICJ, Dr. Akhavan would know more about this, but I guess my immediate quick response would be we need to see what the final verdict will be. If it is a unanimous verdict, then greater the pressure on Myanmar. Don't forget, Myanmar is a member of ICJ, and it's not someone who can say, I don't care. And of course, the General Assembly would also be there, even if there is some misgiving on the part of the Security Council. But I guess we need to wait for the final verdict to come. As for now, the provisional measures that the Gambia has requested, Myanmar has submitted a report. We have to see, what will be the outcome, and they're supposed to give every 6 months as to the progress, and those things are also equally important. But what I'm flagging, what I flagged today, I think is very critical, and that is they are no longer, Bengalis as such, and this is what has defined not only the verdict that came out from ICJ, which clearly mentions them as Rohingya, but Myanmar, when they submitted their position in the ICJ, not for once they used the term Bengalis or illegal migrants. They used the term Arakanese Muslim. That makes it very clear that the debate that was earlier there is no longer there. And so they immediately need to change the 1982 law that they have. And I think that will be a bigger step, for the Rohingyas to get the identity that is very much required.
Thank you very much, Professor Imtiaz. I think since you said Professor Akhavan can also reply to that question, I would like to tag that question to Professor Payam as well, along with another question from Kainat Kazi from Karachi, Pakistan, to Professor Akhavan. She would like to know your perception regarding how youth's voices can be ensured by government officials, and what strategies should be followed to ensure that?
Thank you very much, Mr. Ahmed. Could you please indicate once again on the first question?
Sure.
Is it
Mr. Bari's question, since that's the crux of the issue today, is the question is, when will Myanmar accept the ICJ's final verdict? And if Myanmar does reject the final verdict, then what our steps are next for the Rohingya repatriation?
Yes, thank you. The judgment of the court on January 23rd of this year is what we call an order on provisional measures. It is something akin to an injunction, basically ordering Myanmar to take all necessary measures to prevent future acts of genocide, irrespective of the court's final judgment in due course on whether past acts of genocide have been committed, and if so, what is the scope of responsibility and the remedies. And I anticipate that it will take a good period of time still, perhaps 3 to 4 years. It's difficult to predict accurately until the final judgment of the court. And among the remedies which the Gambia has requested from the court, one of them is the safe and dignified return of Rohingya refugees to their homes. I would also add to what Professor Imtiaz has said, that the court resolved the question of the Rohingya. The word Rohingya did not once pass the lips of any of the council or representatives of Myanmar. And the court simply said that those who self-identify as Rohingya, and we are no longer in this era where you can deny people's identity and use that as justification to eradicate them. So it doesn't matter whether objectively there is such a thing as Rohingya, as long as they identify themselves as Rohingya. And the more fundamental point is their human rights. It doesn't matter what they are or are not. They have human rights because they're unquestionably human beings. In respect of the question on youth voices, I think that it's a very good question, and it is important to bear in mind that as my colleague Antonia said, that the road to justice is very long. So it's very easy to have slogans and protests, but it's another thing to really commit your life to doing good in the world, and understanding that it's not an easy road, that it's very easy to be idealistic when you haven't paid a price for your ideals. But when you go out there in the world and you see suffering and you see injustice and you're wounded and you are sad and you're angry, but you continue, you persist, that is when you really begin to understand what it means to really dedicate your life. So in terms of how the youth can let their voices be heard, well, lead by example. Teach the older generation the new world that you want to create by changing the way in which you live your own lives and the choices that you make, because the world is tired of empty words. And you're hearing this from a law professor who says nothing but empty words. So I really think it's a great question, and you should not underestimate the power of your own choices and your own actions, and realize that even in the short term, if you're not listened to, that in the long run, you will have impact, and those in power will have no choice but to listen to what you have to say.
Thank you, Professor Akavan. What you said today are not empty words. They have been listened very dutifully by all of us, and they carried a lot of meaning for many of us. So I would now like to put a really difficult question to Antonia. From Nahinur Rahman of Bangladesh, he's asking from his voice, I know this is difficult to say, but when will the problem be solved? And what is the timeline goal of government authorities and international organizations to send back the Rohingyas to their own home? And when do you expect this to happen? And if this was not a difficult one, I would add another question to you, and other panelists are welcome to answer after her, regarding the Xinjiang province of China and the Uyghur Muslims over there, the reports of some persecutions of them over there as well. And what's your take on it, and what's the path forward? Thank you.
Tough questions indeed. Thank you very much. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to answer the first one. You know, when will the problem be solved? The problem, I mean, we have hundreds of thousands of Rohingya who want to return home to Myanmar. That's what those that we represent say. That's what they want. They want to go home, but the conditions have to be safe for them to return. We all know that. And Myanmar has to acknowledge what has happened to them. And that until we see that and they have their basic rights, they won't be able to return home. So I think we have a role to play in that. And, you know, going back to the question that Professor Akavan was asked about the youth's role, I think that the youth can form these committees, can lobby the governments, you can be persuasive to support justice initiatives, human rights initiatives, that all individuals are equal and should have their basic rights. And you can talk to those that you meet, your family and friends, about what you've heard today. that the Rohingya want to return. How can we ensure that? And of course, OIC has an incredible role to play and has already done so in that. And could there be some cross discussions with Rohingya youth leaders? I do think it's the $1 million question. We're all supporting it, but we don't yet know when that will happen. But justice is an important part of that, and the Rohingya do want that. So these are important initiatives that are taking place. Now, in terms of what's happening in China, this is a question I've been asked before, and actually Legal Action Worldwide doesn't work in China at this present time. It's very difficult, but I think it is an issue that we should be discussing more. What is happening there is also quite shocking. And indeed, I think the youth have a role to raise the voices about the injustices that are happening in whatever country they are in, and also about whether it's happening within their own country, which is also difficult. And it's happening in Europe. Let's be clear, it's happening in America right now. So across the globe, we are seeing that, but we are seeing the youth rise up. And look at the Trump rally recently. That was the youth that stood up and made that difference to that rally. And I say there we had a good example of youth taking action against political leadership when they saw injustice as well.
Would Professor Akavan and Professor Imtiaz want to say a few words regarding these two questions?
Sure. Very quickly to the first question, Antonio tried in some way to answer as to when this will get resolved. If you look to history, if you go back to the 70s and the 90s, I was not so much involved in the 70s when the exodus took place, but the 90s was a little bit involved. So it happened almost suddenly. It almost it looked that nothing will happen, and then suddenly things change. My hunch, and this is my hunch, I may be wrong. My hunch is that Myanmar will not wait for the final verdict. I think that would be too risky for them. They will try to resolve, given the provisional measures that have already taken place, which is unanimous, and the word Rohingya is there. They themselves have not used the term Bengalis. So the question does not arise now as to what they will write. They can't write they're foreigners because here is Myanmar saying in ICJ that there are Arakanese Muslims. So they have to write Arakanese Muslim. If that is the case, then why do they have to go through the same process like a foreigner? So I think it's a legal issue they got into, and the only way they can resolve this is to go back to 1982, which the Kofi Annan Commission report makes it very clear, and review it and get these people in. Because if they wait till the final verdict, and most likely, and that's again, given the evidence that we have this time. You see, in the 70s and the 90s, it is different because we did not have the evidence of a genocide. But this time, there's so much evidence, and not to mention, one should not forget that now rape is a genocidal offense, which was not there in the 70s and the 90s. Now, if you look at all those conditions and the technology that we have now, the evidence is so much clear this time that there was an intent to destroy, as I said, if not in whole, in part. If that is, the case, then my take on the question is, I don't think they're going to wait, but one has to see how they're going to work on that. And to add to that, and this is where the youth comes very importantly, Myanmar wants to develop. Myanmar wants to, get into the globalized world, and it has a potential of becoming, but by having a genocide and by keeping more than 1 million people out, and with the Arakan problematic, it is an impossibility. And I think anyone, you don't have to be an economist or an investor, knows that you can't have a country where you have an ICJ case, an ICC case, and think that you can develop, freely. So they need to resolve the issue very quickly in order for the economic momentum, to gear in, all the momentum that they required. And the final, and this is where the youth comes, I think and I have my all hope on the youth, is that if they continue hammering, and now the technology is there for you to open up a discussion, bring some of the things which can put pressure, also bring the countries which are trying to invest in Myanmar, if you can shame them, all those things, if they happen, I'm sure some of the supporters on which Myanmar is banging on, they will also know that it's time that Myanmar changes its laws and take the 1.1 million and give the autonomy that is there in the constitution, unless until they want to change that, which is very difficult for them to change. Final word on the repatriation. You see, the reason now they're saying that we don't want to, we can't start the repatriation because of the Arakan army. And that's the argument they're giving. And I say precisely because of the Arakan army, I think Bangladesh has already put this idea, or Prime Minister has put this idea at the UN, and that is to have a safe, zone. I say this is the best time to go back to that idea of safe zone if they have problem of the Arakan army, and not to mention it's not only Arakan army. If you look at the map of Myanmar, they have insurgencies all around. So it's not something that they are handling, that Arakan army is something new, or they're handling insurgents for the first time. Since they have a Arakan army problem or a problem insurgency of, in the Arakan region, I think it is important that a safe zone be created where their friends, whether it is China or Japan or India or even ASEAN countries, can also have a presence side by side with the Myanmar military to welcome the Rohingyas back.
Thank you very much. I think we've got some more questions. So before, I'll just take two more questions here, one for Antonia, one for Professor Takavan. So the first one for Antonia from Egypt, from Ayatollah Mustafa. And his question to you is, what do you expect from young leaders and youth around the globe to be an effective factor to bring justice to Rohingya?
On.
Thank you very much. That's a good question, and I think I mentioned some of the initiatives I would have suggested earlier. I think that the youth have an incredibly important role in lobbying and persuading their governments, in lobbying the elder generation, those who may have more sway with their governments as well. And I do think they could think about how to form committees and to support these multiple justice processes that are going to be long. So it's going to be in their generation that they're going to be supporting them. And I also think that they can educate themselves about these different justice processes, and so happy that they could listen to us today. What is available through national courts, international courts, how can they support that themselves? Maybe they want to engage, maybe they want to be young human rights lawyers. We would encourage that. Education is crucial in changing the future and in changing the way that we behave. And I would really encourage them to support education initiatives across the board within the OIC, and again to speak to the youth, to the Rohingya, and as well, how can ask them what do they want? They want to go back to Myanmar. What do the youth in Myanmar want? Do we know? Do they know what's happening? What we've understood is that they don't really know what's happened to the Rohingya. Are they getting the message across? We heard, that when Aung San Suu Kyi went to The Hague, she had such huge support. That support's coming from Myanmar, but do the youth really support that? What about the use of social media and Facebook? An incredible role to play in getting the message out about what is happening, and just changing the dialogue, changing the narrative is so very important for future generations.
Thank you very much. I'll go to Professor Akavan with two questions. One from Ridwanullah from Bangladesh is, if the political settlement from Myanmar government is impossible, then what will be a resilient issue in this case? And just another add-on to that question, I'll combine another question, is how united are the Muslim countries of the world in resolving the Rohingya crisis? since you have assisted one country, I'm asking you this question.
Thank you for those two questions, and I apologize in advance that after these questions I must unfortunately go on another call. So I appreciate this kind invitation, well, in respect of the first question, if a political settlement is impossible with Myanmar, unfortunately I'm not able to answer that question because I serve as legal counsel. And I am constrained in what I can and cannot say. And in a sense, my role is quite strictly limited to presenting the case of the Gambia before the International Court of Justice. And what political implications that case may or may not have is really not in my hands. But obviously, I think the world is a better place with rather than without that case. And this brings me to the second question about the unity of the Islamic countries. As I explained, I think this is an unprecedented, groundbreaking moment for the organization of Islamic cooperation. And it is a remarkable occasion where 57 countries are standing up and standing in solidarity with the victims of genocide. And when I was in The Hague, in the International Court of Justice, it's called the Great Hall of Justice, the ambassador of Saudi Arabia was in the room, the ambassador of Senegal, the ambassador of Bangladesh, and it was a remarkable moment to see all of those countries standing in solidarity with the victims of genocide. And I hope that this will be just the beginning of a much wider engagement, if you like, in the Islamic space with the idea of human rights and accountability, which once again brings me back to the comments that my colleagues have made about the importance of youth and the importance of assuming responsibility and never underestimating your power to make a difference.
Thank you, Professor Kavan, for your time. I do realize we have kept our panelists for a long duration, so I will not indulge your patience much longer. I will bring the Q&A session to a close now, unless you really have to get something out. But I think we've covered very widely, and a very wide range of questions have come, and your deliberations have been very illuminating in this manner. I would, to bring this session to a close, I would like to ask the respected Secretary of Youth and Sports of the Government of Bangladesh, Mr. Akhtar Hussain, to give his closing remarks. And Professor Kavan, we do realize you have to go. Thank you very much.
I apologize sincerely. Khuda Hafiz, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. His Excellency Mr. Abdul Hamid Gol, Minister of Justice, Republic of Turkey, Honorable Mr. Nabil Ahmed, Member of Parliament, Bangladesh, Mr. Masood bin Momen, Honorable Secretary, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Bangladesh, Mr. Taha Ihan, President ICOF, Professor Dr. Paya Makhavan, Counsel to the Gambia and Professor of International Law at McGill University, Professor Imtiaz Ahmed, Department of International Relations, University of Dhaka, Ms. Antonia Malvi, Founder of Executive Director, Legal Action Worldwide, Ms. Yasmin, Canada resident Rohingya activist, distinguished participants, youth delegates, journalists of electronic and print media, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum, and a very good evening. First of all, I would like to pay my deepest gratitude and homage to the greatest Bengali of all times, our father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, the icon of youth, under whose undisputed visionary leadership we got our coveted independence. I express my utmost gratitude to the Honorable Prime Minister, Government of the People's Republic of Bangladesh, Her Excellency Sheikh Hasina, for declaring the inauguration of the Dhaka OIC Youth Capital 2020. We have passed last 2 days with inaugural ceremony of Dhaka OIC Youth Capital 2020 program, followed by Resilient Youth Leadership Summit with a slogan, Resilient for Parity and Prosperity. The summit has 2 sessions. Number 1, COVID-19 crisis, youth and technology for building a resilient future. And number 2, Rohingya case in ICJ, the road to accountability and justice. We also have a virtual tour to Rohingya camps, which is organized by Ministry of Foreign Affairs in collaboration with UNHCR, IOM, and University of Cambridge. Ladies and gentlemen, the summit has taken place in participation with 250 global youth leaders, along with the expert panelists, to learn and craft the strategies to build a resilient world, particularly in the context of COVID-19 pandemic. The summit emphasizes the leadership, vision, ideology, and imagination of the youth for constructing an innovative, resilient, and inclusive narrative to ensure a leadership position in the affairs of the world. So this program is particularly important in the COVID-19 and post-COVID recovery and reconstruction for an equitable, legal, global economic order. We often hear that the youth are the future, but it's time to acknowledge that they are also the present and the most relevant stakeholders in building up resilience against COVID-19. We must ensure that the voices of youth are properly addressed. They should be involved at every stages of policies and interventions, starting from formulation to implementation, and finally at monitoring and evaluation phase. I believe that the summit help us to bring together those youths with promise for a better today and for a brighter tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, youths are the most affected in COVID-19 pandemic, as they are the most active stakeholders in the society in terms of productivity, mobility, and interaction. Consequently, COVID-19 crisis is disruptive in terms of their lifestyle and prospects for their future. This crisis situation has opened numerous windows of opportunity for the youths to find alternative means in response to the COVID-19, especially for the more vulnerable communities and stakeholders in the society like the Rohingya refugees. The youths can play a vital role in building up resilience against COVID-19 pandemic through digital activities and by coming up with new ideas. I believe that this event is a great opportunity for the youths who are participated from all over the world to showcase their talent and to prove that they are capable to lead the world towards a better future for all. Resilient Youth Leadership Summit will allow us to incorporate the youth in policy formulation process and get innovative ideas and solutions from them on how to better manage the COVID-19 crisis in terms of addressing the emergency as well as building post-COVID resilience. By introducing the participants regarding displaced, persecuted Rohingya community from Myanmar, I hope that it will help us building up a sense of awareness among the youth about the ordeal and struggle of the Rohingya community. Ladies and gentlemen, young people want to change the world. They are usually aware of relevant issues that affect them and the world, but they wonder how to go about them. They are brave, dynamic, and self-confident. They have the ideas, the creativity, and great energy to shape a better world. They are full of hope, and through innovation and imagination, they are problem solvers and have a great potential to generate a positive social change in the world. Young people are in a continuous search for the transcendence and generates the desire of helping the environment, countries, communities, and families. With globalization and technology, the world has even become smaller, with unlimited possibilities of connection. There is a unique chance for young people to unite in solidarity and emphasize on real friendship. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope that 2 sessions and virtual tour of the summit have a great value to the youths of the world to understand the Rohingya crisis and incite thoughts about the next possible course of action. For such arrangement, I would like to convey my gratitude to Dr. A.K. Abdul Momen, MP, Honorable Minister, Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Bangladesh, and his colleagues. I would also like to give thanks to IOM, UNHCR, and University of Cambridge for arranging such type of virtual tour. At the summit, we have honorable ministers, diplomats, dignitaries, along with 250 youth representatives from OIC member states and beyond. I convey my gratitude towards all moderators, panelists, contributors, and participants for being here to share their valuable knowledge and experience with us. I would like to express thanks to OIC and ICOF for selecting Dhaka as the OIC Youth Capital and convey my gratitude towards the global leaders and dignitaries for their support and cooperation. I hope their support will be always with us to solve the Rohingya issues. I would also like to express my hope and confidence towards the youth representatives of the OIC member states and rest of the world. I hope that they will certainly make this world a better place than what it is now. Let me appreciate to all of you for responding our call and appearing in COVID-19 situation. We hope OIC Youth Capital 2020 will be a very successful event with all of your support and cooperation. Let me take the opportunity to invite you to attend all the programs to celebrate the birth centenary of Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman and rest of the programs of OIC Youth Capital 2020. The power of youth is the common strength for the whole world. The faces of young people are the faces of present and our future. No segment in the society can match the power, idealism, enthusiasm, and courage of the young people. So let us get on board to define a better tomorrow together. Thank you very much. Thank you all. May Bangladesh live forever.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary, for your kind words.